You left him at the hospital because you said he would never have a normal life. My father's fingers tightened around his coffee cup, but he didn't deny it. My mother did. We were trying to protect everyone, she whispered. I looked at the man sitting beside me. My son, Noah, 20 years old now. Calm. Quiet. His eyes fixed on the architectural drawings spread across the conference table. The same boy they once called a burden. The same child they refused to visit after his autism diagnosis. The same young man whose signature now sat at the bottom of a contract worth $2.3 million. And the only reason my parents had suddenly remembered they were grandparents. They thought they were here to negotiate. They had no idea every word they spoke was about to cost them everything. If you've ever watched people suddenly become family the moment money appears, let me know where you're watching from. Stories like this happen more often than people admit. My name is Claire Morgan. I'm 46 years old, and for most of my adult life, I worked as a structural estimator for a commercial construction company in Columbus, Ohio. People think my job was about concrete and steel. It wasn't. It was about numbers that had to match reality. A missing decimal could collapse an entire budget. A forgotten signature could stop a project worth millions. I spent 23 years learning one lesson. Nothing disappears. Someone always signed for it. That lesson would eventually save my son. But 12 years earlier, I didn't know any of that. Back then, I was simply a single mother trying to understand a diagnosis that frightened everyone except the little boy who had received it. Noah was 8 when specialists confirmed he was autistic. He loved buildings, not toys. Buildings. He memorized floor plans the way other children memorized cartoons. He could spend hours drawing bridges from memory after seeing them only once. He noticed patterns nobody else noticed. If someone moved a chair 6 inches, he'd quietly push it back exactly where it belonged. To me, these were simply parts of who he was. To my parents, they were evidence something was wrong. My mother, Linda, cried before the doctor even finished explaining the diagnosis. Not because she worried about Noah, because she worried about what relatives would say. What kind of future can a child like that have? She asked. My father barely looked at Noah. Instead, he stared out the clinic window. Finally, he muttered something I'll never forget. He's going to spend his whole life depending on someone. Those words followed me for years. At first, I believed fear was making them cruel. I kept hoping education would fix ignorance. I mailed articles, books, research papers. I invited them to therapy appointments. They declined every single one. Then the conversations changed. They stopped asking how Noah was doing. Instead, they asked how much caring for him cost, how exhausted I looked, whether I had considered residential programs, whether I still had time to start another family. Every visit became less about my son and more about replacing him. The breaking point came during Thanksgiving. Noah was 10. He accidentally knocked over a bowl of mashed potatoes after becoming overwhelmed by the noise. The room went silent. My mother sighed dramatically. My father pushed back his chair. Then he looked directly at me. You've sacrificed enough. I thought he meant helping with Noah. Instead, he said, there's still time to put him somewhere professionals can handle him. I laughed because surely I had misunderstood. He wasn't joking. My mother nodded. You deserve a real life. A real life. As though the little boy sitting beside me wasn't real. As though he couldn't hear every word. Noah quietly stood, picked up the spilled bowl, walked into the kitchen, didn't say a single word. That silence hurt more than any argument ever could. I packed our coats. We left before dessert. That was the last holiday we spent together. The following Monday, my parents transferred ownership of the small duplex they'd been renting to me. They had purchased it years earlier as an investment. I paid below market rent. It was the only reason I could afford therapy. The notice gave me 60 days to leave. No explanation. Just paperwork. Technically legal. Emotionally devastating. I didn't fight it. I found a tiny townhouse across town. Smaller bedrooms. Longer commute. Higher rent. But it belonged to nobody except the bank. Sometimes independence costs more upfront. It usually saves you later. 3 years passed. Then 5. Then 8. My parents told relatives I had cut them out for no reason. Church friends believed them. Cousins stopped calling. Apparently, I was the bitter daughter who refused loving grandparents' access to their grandson. Funny how lies grow when nobody questions the gardener. Meanwhile, life kept moving. Noah grew taller, quieter, more confident. His fascination with buildings became an obsession with architectural visualization. He taught himself professional design software before finishing high school, not because anyone forced him, because he genuinely loved solving impossible spaces. He'd stare at an abandoned warehouse and whisper, "This could become apartments." An empty shopping center. That roof can stay. Old factories. Unused schools. Forgotten churches. He never saw ruins. He saw possibilities. His high school drafting teacher noticed first. Mr. Alvarez pulled me aside one afternoon. "Your son doesn't think like my students," he said. "He thinks like developers." I smiled politely. Teachers often exaggerate. He didn't. Mr. Alvarez introduced Noah to a retired architect named Samuel Pierce. Samuel volunteered twice a week mentoring gifted students. Within 3 months, he stopped calling Noah a student. He called him a colleague. That terrified Noah. He didn't believe compliments. Not after hearing for years that he was a burden. One afternoon, Samuel asked him why he never submitted designs to competitions. Noah shrugged. "People don't usually choose someone like me." Samuel answered without hesitation. "They choose work." That sentence changed everything. If you've ever needed one person to believe in you before you could believe in yourself, leave a comment. Sometimes one voice changes an entire future. Samuel encouraged Noah to enter an international sustainable housing competition. Thousands entered. Noah almost withdrew 3 separate times. He hated attention, but he finished, submitted the project, forgot about it. 8 months later, an email arrived. He hadn't simply won. A major development company wanted exclusive licensing rights to his modular housing system. They planned to build affordable neighborhoods using his designs across several states. After months of negotiations, the licensing agreement closed. Value, $2.3 million. I remember staring at the contract while Noah quietly studied the parking lot outside the attorney's office. "Are we okay?" he asked. "Not. Are we rich?" "Not. What can I buy?" "Just. Are we okay?" I cried, because for the first time in years, yes, we were. The money went into protected investment accounts under Noah's ownership, professional financial oversight, independent legal review, everything transparent, everything documented, every transaction recorded. Construction taught me paperwork. Life taught me why paperwork matters. 3 weeks after local newspapers reported the deal, my phone rang. Mom. The first call in 12 years. I let it go to voicemail. "Claire," she said warmly, "we've missed you both terribly." Not one apology, not one question about Noah, just carefully rehearsed affection. Then came flowers, birthday cards, family photos, old memories. Finally, a letter from an attorney. They requested mediation regarding grandparent involvement in Noah's financial future. Interesting wording. Very expensive wording. My lawyer, Diane Foster, read the documents twice, then smiled. They've already made their biggest mistake. What mistake? They put everything in writing. I asked whether we should respond immediately. She shook her head. No, let them explain themselves. Truth rarely needs many words. Greed never stops talking. The following week became strangely quiet. No threatening emails. No angry phone calls. Just silence. The kind of silence that usually means people are planning something. Diane wasn't surprised. They're building a story, she told me. They know they can't attack the contract, so they'll attack your credibility. She was right. 3 days later, my cousin Rachel called. Her voice sounded uncomfortable. I didn't know Noah kept you from letting Grandma and Grandpa see him. I nearly dropped my coffee. What? Rachel hesitated. They've been telling everyone you became controlling after the diagnosis. They said they begged to stay involved. They said every birthday present was returned. Returned. That word landed like a brick, because every birthday gift my parents ever mailed didn't exist. They had never sent one. Not once. Instead, I remembered something else. Every birthday for nearly 6 years, Noah made handmade Christmas ornaments and birthday cards for them. Tiny watercolor houses, little bridges, handwritten notes. He insisted we mail them. Every single package came back. Refused. Returned to sender. At first, I blamed the postal service. Then I blamed bad addresses. Eventually, I stopped pretending. I kept every unopened package in a storage box inside our attic. Not because I expected to need them, because throwing them away somehow felt like throwing away proof that Noah had kept trying. I hadn't opened that box in years. That evening, I climbed into the attic. Dust covered everything. Winter decorations, old school projects, broken lamps. Near the back sat a blue plastic storage container. Inside, every returned envelope remained exactly where I'd left them. Dates written carefully across each one. Birthday after birthday. Christmas after Christmas. Some still had Noah's childish handwriting. Dear Grandma. Dear Grandpa. Love, Noah. Across every envelope. The same red stamp. Refused. I carried the box downstairs. Noah looked up from his computer. You found them. His voice was calm. You knew they were here? He nodded. I've always known. I stared at him. When I was 15, I couldn't sleep one night. I found the attic key. He looked down at one of the envelopes. I read all of them. My heart sank. You never told me. I didn't want you to feel worse. Sometimes parents believe they're protecting children. Sometimes children quietly protect their parents instead. That realization hurt. Noah picked up the oldest envelope. I stopped wondering why they hated me after I found these. They didn't hate you. He gave me a small smile. I know. They just never wanted the version of me that existed. There was no anger in his voice, only certainty that somehow made it even harder to hear. A few days later, Diane called. They've officially requested mediation. Should we decline? No. Why not? Because I want witnesses. She explained everything carefully. If my parents wanted access to Noah's finances, they first had to explain why. Every accusation would become part of the official record. Every claim, every story, every lie. Once spoken, they couldn't pretend they'd never said it. Construction projects fail when measurements don't match reality. Courtrooms work the same way. Documents matter. Timelines matter. Receipts matter. Feelings don't erase paperwork. Diane asked one unusual question before ending the call. Do you still have every returned envelope? Yes. Good. Bring them. She paused. And Claire, don't interrupt your parents. What? Let them finish. People determined to rewrite history usually overestimate their audience. The mediation was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. A private conference room downtown. Neutral location. No judge. Just attorneys. A licensed mediator. Financial representatives. And both families. The night before. I barely slept. Noah did. He spent the evening organizing something on the dining room table. The envelopes. Old family photographs. A thin folder. Several architectural sketches. Everything arranged with perfect symmetry. Around midnight, I walked into the kitchen. "What are you doing?" He didn't look up, putting everything in order. "You don't have to come tomorrow." "Yes," he answered quietly. "I do." Then he reached into his backpack, pulled out one sealed white envelope, wrote something across the front, folded it carefully, placed it beneath the stack of returned birthday cards. I pointed toward it. "What's that?" He smiled slightly. "You'll see." I didn't ask again. Sometimes Noah needed to finish thoughts in his own time. I'd learned years ago not to rush them. The next morning, we arrived 15 minutes early. The conference room overlooked downtown Columbus. Long wooden table, glass walls, coffee that smelled better than it tasted. Diane reviewed our paperwork one final time. Then the door opened. My parents walked in, older, slower, better dressed than I remembered. My mother smiled, as though 12 years had been 12 days. "Oh, Claire, you look wonderful." She hugged the air. Not me. My father nodded politely. Then both of them looked directly at Noah. For exactly 3 seconds. Long enough to recognize him. Not long enough to actually see him. And in that moment, I knew they hadn't come for their grandson. They had come for his success. My mother took the seat directly across from Noah, not beside him, not where a grandmother naturally would, across from him, like he was the opposing side in a business negotiation. That told me everything before anyone spoke. The mediator, Thomas Green, introduced everyone and explained the ground rules. "We're here to explore whether an agreement is possible. No interruptions. Everyone gets an opportunity to speak." My parents' attorney smiled politely. "We appreciate that." Diane simply nodded. She didn't even open our main file. That made me nervous. She had prepared for weeks, yet she seemed almost relaxed. I'd learned something about Diane over the months we'd worked together. The calmer she looked, the worse things usually became for the other side. Thomas turned toward my parents. "Mrs. and Mr. Whitmore, why don't you begin?" My mother folded her hands, took a slow breath, then performed. "We've spent 12 years grieving the loss of our only grandson." Her voice cracked at exactly the right places. We begged Claire to let us be involved. She refused every visit, every birthday, every holiday. She dabbed at tears with a tissue she somehow already had in her sleeve. We never stopped loving Noah. She looked toward him. "I prayed for you every single night." Noah didn't react, not even a blink. She continued. "When we heard about his success, I thought maybe God was finally giving our family another chance." My father cleared his throat. "I wasn't always good with words, but I never stopped caring." It sounded convincing, painfully convincing. If I hadn't lived those 12 years myself, I might have believed them too. Then their attorney leaned forward. "My clients are not seeking control, only involvement. They're concerned about a young autistic man suddenly responsible for extraordinary wealth." There it was, exactly as Diane predicted. Not after the money, just concerned, reasonable, loving grandparents, helping, until he added one sentence too many. "Given Mr. Whitmore's condition, additional family oversight could provide valuable protection." Condition. He didn't say autism. He said condition, as though my son were a legal problem waiting to happen. I felt anger rise into my chest. Diane gently touched my arm beneath the table. Don't. So I stayed quiet. The mediator turned toward us. Miss Morgan. Diane smiled. Not yet. She looked across the table. I'd like to hear more. My mother's confidence visibly grew. Finally, an audience that wasn't interrupting. She described years of unanswered phone calls, letters that supposedly came back unopened, Christmas gifts they claimed had been returned. She painted herself as a grandmother standing outside a locked door for 12 lonely years. Even my father joined in. I drove past Claire's old neighborhood more times than I can count. I just wanted to see if Noah was okay. He lowered his eyes, but she made it impossible. The room became very quiet. The mediator slowly nodded as he took notes. Their attorney looked satisfied. He believed they'd established exactly what they needed. Loving grandparents, difficult daughter, vulnerable grandson. Then, Diane finally spoke. Thank you. She closed her notebook. I only have a few questions. She looked directly at my mother. You testified that you mailed birthday presents every year. Yes. And Christmas gifts? Of course. You never stopped. Never. Diane nodded thoughtfully. So, you'd recognize Noah's handwriting? My mother's smile hesitated. I suppose. Wonderful. Diane looked toward Noah. He understood immediately. Without speaking, he reached beneath the table, lifted the blue storage box onto the polished wood. The soft thud echoed through the room. Nobody moved. He opened the lid. One by one, he placed 12 birthday envelopes across the conference table, perfectly aligned, oldest to newest, each one addressed in his careful handwriting, each one carrying the same bright red stamp. Refused. Return to sender. Silence. Real silence. Not awkward silence. The kind that arrives when truth enters a room. My mother's face lost its color. Her attorney leaned forward, confused. What exactly is this? Noah answered quietly. My birthday cards. I made one every year. I thought maybe someday. He paused. They'd want them. He slid the oldest card toward his grandmother. You refused every one. My mother stared at it, then forced a laugh. There must have been some postal mistake. The mail gets mixed up all the time. Noah didn't argue. Instead, he reached back into the box, pulled out a thick envelope, still sealed. Across the front, in my mother's own handwriting, was the address she'd personally written 12 years earlier. Inside was the certified receipt from the post office showing she had signed for each refused delivery, every single one. She hadn't accidentally missed them. She had deliberately rejected them. Diane quietly placed the postal receipts beside the birthday cards. 12 certified refusals. 12 signatures. Same recipient. The mediator stopped writing. He simply stared at the documents. Across the table, my father's shoulders slowly collapsed. For the first time that morning, he looked ashamed. But Noah wasn't finished. He reached into the box one last time and removed the sealed white envelope he'd prepared the night before. He held it in his hands for a long moment. Then, instead of giving it to his grandparents, he turned toward me. Mom, this one's yours. The room froze. Even Diane hadn't expected that. I accepted the envelope with shaking hands. On the front, in Noah's neat handwriting, were 6 simple words. To the person who never returned me. My vision blurred before I even opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. I unfolded the letter carefully. Noah's handwriting had become clean and precise over the years, but I could still see traces of the little boy who used to practice each letter 3 times before he was satisfied. The room disappeared. For a few moments, it was only me and his words. Mom. People keep telling me I became successful because I think differently. I don't think that's true. I became successful because someone stayed long enough to understand how I think. You learned every schedule, every sound that overwhelmed me, every place I felt safe, every food I couldn't eat, every building I wanted to draw. You never asked me to become easier. You became stronger instead. Grandma and Grandpa thought I was a burden. You treated me like a blueprint. You never tried to build a different son. You simply learned how I was designed. Everything I have, every dollar, every drawing, every opportunity started with you. If anyone deserves credit for this life, it's the person who never returned me. Love. Noah. By the time I reached the last line, I couldn't see the paper anymore. My eyes were full of tears. Across the table, nobody spoke. Not the mediator, not the lawyers, not even my parents. Diane quietly slid the letter toward Thomas, the mediator. Would you like to read it? He nodded. He read every word. Slowly, when he finished, he placed it back in front of me with both hands. I think, he said quietly, I've heard everything I need to hear. Their attorney immediately cleared his throat. We still believe my clients deserve. No, Thomas interrupted him. For the first time all morning. No, this mediation is about family involvement. I've now seen 12 years of documented rejection. He gestured toward the envelopes and one written explanation of who actually raised this young man. Then he turned to my parents. I have a question. My mother straightened in her chair. When was the last time you visited Noah before today's meeting? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Her attorney answered instead. My clients. Thomas raised his hand. I'm asking them. Silence. Finally, my father whispered. 12 years. Thomas nodded once. When was the last birthday you attended? No answer. What grade was Noah in when you last spoke to him? Again, nothing. Thomas looked toward Noah. What's your favorite subject? Architecture. What are you working on now? A mixed-income housing project. What city? Cleveland. What inspired it? Noah smiled slightly. An abandoned textile factory. They talked for nearly 5 minutes about buildings, historic preservation, affordable housing, steel framing, natural light, adaptive reuse. My parents looked completely lost. They didn't understand half the conversation because they didn't know him, not even a little. The mediator finally turned back toward them. You've described a grandson. He nodded toward Noah. I've just met a man. Those are not the same thing. Their attorney made one last attempt. My clients simply wished to rebuild a relationship. Diane spoke before anyone else could. Excellent. She smiled politely. Then let's remove the money from the discussion. The room became very still. If this is about love. She slid a prepared document across the table. My client is willing to arrange family counseling. Quarterly meetings. No financial authority. No access to investments. No estate planning. No advisory role. No trust oversight. No compensation. Just time. If rebuilding a relationship is truly the goal. She folded her hands. This should be everything your clients want. I watched my parents. Really watched them. Neither reached for the paper. Neither asked about counseling. Neither asked Noah how he'd been. Neither apologized. Instead, their attorney quietly asked, and the financial arrangements? There it was. The entire room heard it. Even Thomas slowly leaned back in his chair. Diane didn't smile. She simply said, I thought this wasn't about money. Nobody answered. Because nobody could. My father suddenly stood. He looked 20 years older than he had an hour earlier. His eyes settled on Noah. I'm sorry. It was barely louder than a whisper. I should have fought for you. Noah looked at him for a long time. then asked one simple question. When? My father frowned. When what? When were you going to apologize? If I hadn't become successful, the question hung in the room like unfinished construction. No accusation, no raised voice, just one honest question. My father searched for an answer. None came, because there wasn't one. He slowly sat back down, defeated. My mother reacted differently. She became angry. So this is it. One mistake, and we're monsters forever. I looked at her. 12 years isn't one mistake. Returning a child's birthday cards isn't one mistake. Telling everyone I kept you away wasn't one mistake. Coming back only after $2.3 million appeared. I paused. Wasn't one mistake either. For the first time in my life, she had no response. The mediation ended 15 minutes later. No agreement. No financial access. No advisory position. Nothing. As we gathered our things, Thomas quietly stopped Noah. I hope you keep designing. Noah nodded. I will. The world needs people who see possibilities. Noah smiled. So did I. Thomas looked at me. I think he found one. 3 weeks later, their attorney officially withdrew every request. No appeal. No second mediation. No lawsuit. Everything ended with a single signed document. Legally, the case was over. But families don't end on paperwork. They end in living rooms, church halls, holiday dinners, small conversations. My cousin Rachel called first. I saw the documents. I'm so sorry. Then my aunt. Then 2 old family friends. One by one, people discovered the truth. Not because I defended myself, because the evidence defended itself. The returned birthday cards, the certified refusals, the timeline, the contracts, the lies simply couldn't survive paperwork. About 6 months later, Noah's housing project officially broke ground. The city invited him to speak. Hundreds attended, reporters, engineers, students, young architects. At the end of his speech, someone asked, "What made you believe affordable housing mattered so much?" Noah thought for a moment, then answered exactly as only he could. Everyone deserves a place where nobody asks them to become someone else before they're allowed to belong. The audience stood, not because he was rich, not because he was autistic, because every person there understood exactly what he meant. Today, that blue storage box still sits in my closet. Most of the envelopes are gone now. They were copied for legal records before being carefully packed away. But I kept one. The very first birthday card Noah ever made. Not because of the red stamp across the front, but because of what was written inside in crooked 8-year-old handwriting. I hope someday we can all be together. He never got that wish. Instead, he got something better. A life surrounded by people who chose him before they knew what he would become. If this story stayed with you, remember this: the people who deserve to celebrate your success are rarely the ones who ignored your struggle. Real family isn't revealed when life is easy. It's revealed by who stays, long before there's anything to gain. And if you've ever chosen the person everyone else gave up on, I hope you never regret it. Sometimes the greatest fortune in a person's life isn't the money they earn. It's knowing exactly who never walked away. She folded her hands. This should be everything your clients want. I watched my parents, really watched them. Neither reached for the paper. Neither asked about counseling. Neither asked Noah how he'd been. Neither apologized. Instead, their attorney quietly asked, "And the financial arrangements?" There it was. The entire room heard it. Even Thomas slowly leaned back in his chair. Diane didn't smile. She simply said, "I thought this wasn't about money." Nobody answered, because nobody could. My father suddenly stood. He looked 20 years older than he had an hour earlier. His eyes settled on Noah. "I'm sorry. It was barely louder than a whisper. I should have fought for you. Noah looked at him for a long time, then asked one simple question. When? My father frowned. When what? When were you going to apologize? If I hadn't become successful, the question hung in the room like unfinished construction. No accusation, no raised voice, just one honest question. My father searched for an answer. None came, because there wasn't one. He slowly sat back down, defeated. My mother reacted differently. She became angry. So this is it. One mistake, and we're monsters forever. I looked at her. 12 years isn't one mistake. Returning a child's birthday cards isn't one mistake. Telling everyone I kept you away wasn't one mistake. Coming back only after $2.3 million appeared. I paused. Wasn't one mistake either. For the first time in my life, she had no response. The mediation ended 15 minutes later. No agreement. No financial access. No advisory position. Nothing. As we gathered our things, Thomas quietly stopped Noah. I hope you keep designing. Noah nodded. I will. The world needs people who see possibilities. Noah smiled. So did I. Thomas looked at me. I think he found one. 3 weeks later, their attorney officially withdrew every request. No appeal. No second mediation. No lawsuit. Everything ended with a single signed document. Legally, the case was over. But families don't end on paperwork. They end in living rooms, church halls, holiday dinners, small conversations. My cousin Rachel called first. I saw the documents. I'm so sorry. Then my aunt. Then 2 old family friends. One by one, people discovered the truth. Not because I defended myself, because the evidence defended itself. The returned birthday cards, the certified refusals, the timeline, the contracts. The lies simply couldn't survive paperwork. About 6 months later, Noah's housing project officially broke ground. The city invited him to speak. Hundreds attended. Reporters, engineers, students, young architects. At the end of his speech, someone asked, "What made you believe affordable housing mattered so much?" Noah thought for a moment, then answered exactly as only he could. Everyone deserves a place where nobody asks them to become someone else before they're allowed to belong. The audience stood, not because he was rich, not because he was autistic, because every person there understood exactly what he meant. Today, that blue storage box still sits in my closet. Most of the envelopes are gone now. They were copied for legal records before being carefully packed away. But I kept one. The very first birthday card Noah ever made. Not because of the red stamp across the front, but because of what was written inside in crooked 8-year-old handwriting. I hope someday we can all be together. He never got that wish. Instead, he got something better. A life surrounded by people who chose him before they knew what he would become. If this story stayed with you, remember this: the people who deserve to celebrate your success are rarely the ones who ignored your struggle. Real family isn't revealed when life is easy. It's revealed by who stays, long before there's anything to gain. And if you've ever chosen the person everyone else gave up on, I hope you never regret it. Sometimes the greatest fortune in a person's life isn't the money they earn. It's knowing exactly who never walked away.